Hi everyone, my name is Toyosi Etim Efyong, and it's my honor and a great privilege to be speaking with Pastor Wale and Pastor Laolu Adefarasin today. They've been married for 36 years, and just hearing that alone, it makes me wonder how it has been possible and what the journey for them has been so far. And with the divorce rate right now, among young people, there just seems to be a lot of confusion and uncertainty about marriage. And I really just want to understand how they've done it, understand how they've stayed together, and I'm hoping we can all learn from this interview. So yes, thank you so much for your time today.
It's a pleasure to speak with you.
And I hope we meet your expectations.
I'm sure you will. Yes, okay, so of course I'm going to take you down memory lane, how and where did you meet?
Okay, we met in 1982. He had just come back to Nigeria from the UK, and I'd been back 2 years. And we met at a party, believe it or not.
Wow.
At a disco party.
So you were going for parties?
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Wasn't a pastor then.
You weren't a pastor then?
Didn't even know I was going to become a pastor.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
It wasn't possible with you.
So was it love at first sight from you?
I would say love at first sight, but I thought, oh, he's a good-looking guy.
Okay.
I like good-looking guys.
Okay. Okay. Was it love at first sight?
It was Marvin Gaye.
Marvin Gaye. Which part?
He did the song,
Right.
Sexual Healing. And I think we both so loved the song.
Oh.
That, every time they played it, we remembered. And so that's where it started.
Remember, we weren't Christians then.
Yeah, you threw me off a bit, but yes, I'm good. Wow. Were there other options at that time? Did you have other people you were interested in? I'll ask you the same question, don't worry. Did you have other people you were interested in at that point?
There were lots of people who were interested in me.
Oh my God.
Okay, now.
Did you just say that?
No, one has to be honest
Don't
and
worry,
truthful.
I can say the same.
Okay.
One has to be honest and truthful. But I didn't have anybody in particular
Right.
that I was interested in, no.
Right. So what made her stand out?
Chemistry and all those things.
All of that. Okay. So I'm going to ask you the same question.
Yeah, I had options. But he was the most good-looking of them all.
The most good
Prince
looking.
Charming, yes.
Oh, great.
I went for the looks first.
Okay, I was thinking of that, like, was it just the looks? And you said something earlier. You said you weren't a pastor, so you didn't feel like you were marrying a man of the cloth. It was like...
I didn't marry a man of the cloth.
Right.
I didn't. We weren't even born again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
We both got born again, I think, a few months later.
Okay.
After
Was
we
that
got married.
after you got married? So how long did you date? How long did you...
It's got to be close to 3 years.
Yeah.
Is there a standard time for courtship, in your opinion?
I think that there's a time, it shouldn't be less than, in my opinion, less than 6 months.
Okay.
Because you need to get to know each other a lot more than you did the first day you met. So not less than 6 months. For me, an ideal courtship would last a year. But then it horses for courses, it changes for different people.
But there are people who say when you know, you know. Once you know, and so they want to get married ASAP, especially because they don't want to fall into temptation, all of that. What do you have to say to people like that?
I have a problem with that, because if you're going to fall into temptation, you're going to fall into temptation, okay, whether you rush and get married or not. I think that it's so important for people to know one another up to a point, because I've seen marriages nearly break up because of where they squeeze the toothpaste.
Yeah,
Is that shade?
it is shade.
Do you feel like you're talking to
It is shade. It was an issue. It was an issue. It really
It was a
an
minor issue for us, but I know a couple.
Was it a minor issue?
Okay, so it was minor for him, but it was major for you.
Yeah, because, I'm the one that squeezes the toothpaste anyway. Well, he's the finicky one that, the toothpaste is finished, he's still using it for 2 weeks. But, it was an issue, but we resolved it. Everybody has their own tube of toothpaste.
Fantastic. This is the second time I'm hearing this. Like, if toothpaste, where you press the toothpaste is going to be a problem, just get...
Where you press the toothpaste is only a problem because each represents a different outlook on life. The person that presses diligently is generally a very diligent sort of person.
Wow, more shade.
And the person that presses anywhere generally is a happy-go-lucky person.
Ah, okay.
Generally.
I love how he put it. I thought he was going to say the person is a maybe scattered person, all of that.
He's being diplomatic.
Yeah, that's actually really nice. Okay, so I want to talk about that transition. You know, there are people who get married to let's say a pilot, for example, and then all of a sudden this pilot says, you know what, I've actually wanted to be a surgeon all my life. And I got married to a pilot. So I'm going to use your story as an example. What were you doing before?
I was in business.
Okay.
I was in business. When I first came back, I started a business with a friend. You know, it was a cleaning company, cleaning carpets, upholstery, and things like that. And then later, I went into the export of petroleum products.
So you were an oil and gas big boy?
No, I wouldn't say big boy, but each time you did a sale, you made a bit of money. And then the calling came. I didn't start as a pastor.
Yeah. I
was made a deacon, and it was a very small church I started attending. I was made a deacon, and then the head of deacons, and then the pastor, who was an American that was working at the U.S. Embassy, had to go back home. And they said, well, you're now in charge. So I was in charge of the church, but not the pastor. So I got to the point where it was no longer possible to do both. I could sit in my office and say, right, I want to prepare, I want to pray, and the phone would ring and I'd have to get out of my office and go off to PPMC or NNPC. So I got to the point where I knew I had to choose one. And I was really leaning towards business because of what the benefits were.
Yeah, we were all leaning towards business.
She's like, we were all leaning towards business.
And becoming a pastor was a big sacrifice because in those days there were very few churches. Guiding Light Assembly was the only Pentecostal church in Ikoyi VI for quite some time. So it was tough making the transition because money we didn't have much money except the savings we'd put aside over the years of business.
Little income.
And her income. So it was a difficult transition.
Wow.
But we survived. And I'll tell a little story. Friends, it's very important the kind of friends you have. She had a friend one day that came and dressed her down and said, you know, we know you, somebody that used to, you know, you used to have the latest scarves and you used to, all kinds of things. And said, you know, and that was tough. But we've come through.
Yeah. So how was that for you? What were you doing then? And then how did you handle or navigate this transition into...
I'm a lawyer and I was in practice. But when the children started coming, I started staying more at home. And it was very, very difficult for me. Because it wasn't part of the deal. It wasn't in the bargain that, you know, you're going to become a pastor. It was like an invasion of my territory because the church used to meet in our sitting room. And then they started sitting slowly up the stairs. You know, I thought, oh gosh, they're going to move upstairs. All our chairs were tattered from traffic, and you know, it was all very difficult, and I struggled for a long time. I won't lie. I didn't feel that, you know, that's what we should be doing at that time. And for many years I was like that. But you know, eventually when I sort of handed it over to God and said, you know what, over to you, it became a bit easier, you know. And at that point, I went to live abroad with the children, and that was really, really when I think I got my own call. Because God had to get me by myself. I didn't have him to lean on. I didn't have him to go to, you know, I needed to build up my own relationship with the Lord. So that was how, you know,
wow.
That started.
So the initial years, you weren't supportive?
No, I wasn't.
You were.
It looked like I was, but...
It looked like, but you weren't. How was that for you?
Well, she wasn't unsupportive.
Okay.
But she wasn't actively supportive. But we just got on. We just got on with it.
I must say that, you know, sorry to interrupt, I must say that, you know, one thing I must say for Pastor is that he didn't force me to do anything. He allowed me to grow myself and find my own role. I didn't, you know...
Automatically become mama.
No, and I actually resented it, you know, I just refused to be put into that box of mom. I felt it would age you, first of all.
Or first lady.
The first lady. I didn't want to be put in that box. Right. But in fairness to him, he allowed God to deal with me and bring me to where God wanted me to be, not what people expected. People expected the pastor's wife to be singing in the choir, taking children's church. I couldn't sing. I couldn't teach children's church, so I wasn't going to go into that mold.
Wow. So that must have been a prayer point then, I can only imagine.
Well, I don't know if he was praying about it, but anyway.
He just let things happen.
Yeah, and interestingly, where we lived in England, where she was with the children, was right next door to a ministry. Not a church, it was a ministry to women. And she just wanted something to do part-time while the kids were away from home, while the kids were at school during the day. And so she walked over and she got a job there, a part-time job there. And it was ministry. They prayed, they ministered to people. But they did it the Oyinbo way. It wasn't in your face type of ministry. And that really, I could see her growing by leaps and bounds when she was doing that.
Definitely, it was God that orchestrated that.
I can only imagine. What are the odds?
And living right next to, Christian Family Concern, it was called. Right. But, it did help me. God got me on my own, and then he helped me to grow.
Okay. So how has the journey been so far? You're 36 years married, and you were together for 3 years before that. That's about...
Nearly 40 years.
Anyway, no need to divulge that, but it's obvious.
It's been a journey because obviously, I always say that there's no marriage that is made in heaven. You have to work at it. Right. And I believe that, of course, you would have your challenges because there are two people coming from two different backgrounds coming together. But once you come into a marriage, which I think is the difference now, today, people go into marriage thinking that divorce is an option. They go in thinking divorce is an option, So that means that they're not even going to work at it when the challenges come. Right. But when you go into your marriage knowing that divorce is not an option, or telling yourself divorce is not an option, you're going to work at it.
I feel like sometimes certain things are said, you hear divorce is not an option, divorce is not an option, but it doesn't really get into the heart of a person. So at what point was it clear and very certain for you that divorce was not an option? Because I'm sure there are people in your generation who got divorced, remarried multiple times.
Well, I think for me, I grew up in I don't want to say a broken home, but my parents were divorced when I was 4 years old. Okay. So I had a stepmother. So I already knew that I didn't want my children to grow up in that kind of situation. Right. So I was going to do everything to make my marriage work, So, so I guess where you're coming from also determines your mindset and your outlook, because these days, even though you counsel people and sometimes you say divorce is not an option, but when you look at their situation, you're almost like you people are probably better off apart, but you can't even say that because, pastors are not supposed to say that.
We're going to come to that. We're actually going to come to that. But what made it important for you for your marriage to work?
Marriage is a relationship. And particularly when that marriage brings children into the world, that now these children are going to depend on the couple having a sound and solid relationship for them to have a good relationship when they get married. Because in my view, if you come from a broken home, there's a greater chance that you will also have a broken home yourself. So I really, I feel that I came from a background in which divorce was you're stigmatized if you got divorced. And over the years, over the generations, my grandfather's generation, it wasn't an option at all. My father's generation, it happened once in a while, but our generation, it was a little worse. Now it's almost, people are saying if I go into marriage and it doesn't work, I'm out.
Yeah. We have to counter that mindset. But back to your relationship, what would you say has been the most challenging period of the marriage for you?
I think in our earlier days, we hadn't gotten to know each other as well as we could. So we're still learning to know each other. So the earlier years were probably more challenging than now. Now we already know what to expect, and so we, you know, in some cases for both of us, the fight has been beaten out of us. We fought, you know, and now we just accept, okay, this is what it is. So let's just get on with it.
Right.
Yeah, there were times when we did have issues, and even though I was at fault, he was always the bigger person.
Why is that always the case? Or a lot of times? That's...
So I'm the kind of person that, you know, I could stonewall you for, you know, a month or a week or whatever.
Wow. This was before Jesus, obviously.
Oh, well, before Jesus. Before Jesus, yeah. But, you know, so I've learned, you know, even from him, you know, that at the end of the day, I think the important thing in a relationship is you know what you both feel about each other. And so nobody, even if he does anything that hurts me, I know it's coming from a position of love. It's not coming from a position, I got to get this one, I'm going to, you know. So if you understand that about each other, I think it's easier to, you know, weather the storms.
Right, right. Okay, so I know that in your years of practice and even being ministers, you've counseled so many people. What would you say is one disturbing, or what are some disturbing mindsets you've seen among young people? You've said one already about divorce seemingly being an option. What are some other wrong mindsets? Because sometimes they don't even know that it's wrong. They just think, okay, well, it's a free world now, I have options and all of that. But what are some mindsets that you have seen that have been very disturbing?
As I said, the major one is the fact that people are not ready to make the sacrifices that is needed.
What are these sacrifices?
Give and take, live and let live. You know, sometimes you need to understand that the person that you're with is probably going through their own challenges sometimes, you know. We're so selfish. We only see where we're coming from. We don't see where the other person is. And sometimes that colors the way we respond, and, you know, and people just throw up their arms and think, oh, you know what, I can walk away from this, you know. And I actually think that walking away from a marriage is the easiest thing to do. It's an easy option. Whereas, you know, staying and working at it is the harder option. And that is probably what God expects you to do.
Right.
So long as your life is not threatened, by the way.
Yeah.
I think that the world has changed. More women, more wives are out working. They're working just as much as their husband is, or sometimes even more. So how do you go to work and then come back home and be a wife in the way that the traditional husband expected? So that's one of the challenges that a lot of couples face. Money is another challenge, and it's not necessarily the lack of money. It's just what do we do with the money that we do have. We've had a problem being able to budget.
He's been trying to get me to budget for 36 years. He hasn't managed it yet.
You know, and I think it's so essential that you're able to sit together and plan your finances together. So those are the kind of things that cause problems. Then there's so much intolerance. If I don't have my way, that's it, no way at all. There's so much intolerance, impatience, and my mother used to tell us that if my father came home with a Mercedes-Benz and she knew how much he was earning, she knew he couldn't afford a Mercedes-Benz, she would tell him, where did you get the money to buy this car from? But there's a generation that will say, don't you see your friends are driving Mercs, where's yours? You know, so the world has changed, and that's why for the people of our faith, we need to help them stand in faith and stand on the word, on the truth.
Yeah. Something you said is that just struck me now is that part of women working as hard as men now. And so it's almost as if the men have not fully understood that and still have expectations. And I find that for men and women, there's a lot of, oh, my father did things like this, and so I expect things to be done like this. My mother did things like this. What's the place of our background, even with the evolving culture?
What I say to young people is that it is so important that you bring up your children in a warm and loving environment, and also to stay abreast of what is new. You know, what happens in this home after church on Sunday. We have a few young people around us, so that's where I learn what's going on in the world today. I learn terms like woke, shade, murk.
I heard you say murk. I'm like, okay.
Murk is from years back.
Really?
Okay. And where do you blog?
No.
You know, so there's always a good part of the old tradition and a good part of the new tradition. It's being able to marry both. The important thing is a son will take after his father. The bad examples he learned from his father, he's going to do them in his own marriage. The good examples, he will do them. That's the most likely result. So it's important that we not only live for ourselves, but we live an example for those that are coming behind us.
Right. You want to add to that?
Yes, I think that's also very important, you know, living an intentional life. A life where you know that, as they say, sometimes our lives are the only Bibles that some people will ever read. You know, so we need to live an intentional life so that you know that you're affecting other people. Not that you're pretending and saying, well, let me do this because somebody is watching, but you're living your life knowing that, you know, praying that, you know, you make a good impact on the next generation, and knowing that you've done your best. Right. You know, and I think that's very important that we live an example, or be an example.
Okay, so what's your stance on deal breakers? You know, some young couples now have deal breakers. If he cheats, I'm out. You know, if he hits me, I'm out. If she cheats, I'm out. You know, what's your stance on?
You know, I've had this conversation with some young people before, and I always ask, so what is a deal breaker for you? And, you know, some people say cheating is a deal breaker. But we have seen people who their partners have cheated on them, and yet they've overcome the situation, and they're living happily, you know, because they've been able to forgive. You know, sometimes it's, you know, you say it's unforgivable, but when you decide to pray about it and just look and think, you know, so what are the options? You know, is forgiveness such a bad thing? You know, I don't know. I guess everybody's deal breaker is different.
Yeah. Do you have a deal breaker? At this, after 36 years.
I don't think there are any deal breakers anymore.
You see, if you have a deal breaker, it puts pressure on you. The issue is if somebody, whatever your partner does that hurts you or offends you, you need to take it as at the time, take it to the Lord, and if your attitude is this is a deal breaker, then you won't be looking for how to get around it, how to resolve it. So I think that, yeah, something may happen that really upsets you, or you just decide, I can't take this. But if you have pre-decided that if this happens, I'm off, that's what will happen. You'll leave. So I think don't go into a marriage with a deal breaker.
And also, I think something that looks so bad today may not look so bad in 10 years' time when you look back and think, oh, should I have endured? Should I have stuck it out? Should I have forgiven? Should I have, you know, let this go? Because, you know, hindsight is 20/20 vision.
I know that when I was getting married, I got advice from different people, you know, some saying, keep the matters to yourself. If you have a fight, you know, don't involve a third party, don't wash your dirty linen in public, all of that. I don't know if I should say my opinion now, but I don't particularly agree. You know, I believe in the place of like counselors and older people who have gone through experiences that I probably don't even know about, but understand where I'm coming from. But what's your take on?
I'll tell you, really very straightforward. As much as possible, resolve any issues between the two of you, okay? Now, that's not always possible. So when it isn't possible, don't go to family. Because after you have resolved the issues...
They'll still be angry on your behalf.
I agree that sometimes you need counselors. And one of the problems we have in church is that pastors see themselves as being able to counsel. Now, not all pastors can counsel married couples. Okay. Sometimes you just need to have experience at counseling. So where you can get a good Christian, professional counselor, if the problems are really that deep, then you need to go in that direction. But otherwise, tell your pastor, okay? And the pastor hopefully will know when he's out of his depth or out of her depth and refer you to somebody that can counsel. Because you get all sorts of very complicated issues in marriages. So as a rule of thumb, try and resolve the problems. You should have a conflict resolution mechanism even before you go into marriage, so that you know how you will resolve. I'll give you one story, very quick one. One of my friends in ministry was doing a seminar, and somebody asked him, how do you resolve marriage problems in your marriage? And he said right from day one they had resolved that they would never go to bed backing each other. They would always face each other when they went to sleep, and therefore you couldn't be facing the person that has offended you and not resolve it. So before they went to sleep, they would resolve every issue. That was one conflict resolution mechanism they had. And
sometimes that position may not be comfortable, but
it may not. It may not.
But if it worked for them, hey.
At least they started sleeping that way.
Yeah. So I like that you said that your pastor doesn't necessarily have to be your counselor, because that's one thing I think Christians have not fully understood yet. There's still a heavy expectation from pastors and just from spiritual leaders, but you're talking about professional therapy and professional counseling.
I think also you need to even have maybe a couple who you can, go to.
An older couple.
An older couple who have probably, had experience in some of these areas, and they can relate to where you're at, because they've probably been through it in their own early days of marriage and tell you that, there's a way through this, there's a way out of this. And as Pastor said, family is not the best.
Yeah.
Because, I can say that, confidently say that in 36 years, I've never gone to report him to anybody.
You've had nothing to report now.
If you say so. If you say so. I guess, somehow we've resolved our issues, and we've learned how to, deal with them.
Okay, so what are some conversations that couples should be having before getting married?
Oh, lots and lots and lots. They should be talking about how many children they want, when they want to start having children, because these are things that if you don't talk about them before marriage, they could become issues after marriage. They should be talking about their priorities for money. They should be talking about how they will resolve conflicts, determine their own conflict resolution mechanism. They should talk about everything, including their sexual relationship, so that they don't have unrealistic expectations
of each other.
Right. You want to add to that?
I said pre-marital counseling I think is very important. It reduces the post-marital counseling, if you can have spoken about these things and then, find a way.
Okay.
Well, our pre-marital counseling was rubbish.
Oh my goodness.
It lasted all of 5 minutes.
No, really?
So premarital counseling has to be in-depth. It has to be with couples. You can't have a premarital counseling class. Some people do
10
that.
Couples. And they just tell you do this, don't do this. It doesn't work. I think, first of all, individuals are different. Yes. And especially when you've come from different backgrounds, your expectations are completely different. By the time you get married and the eyes open and the love is not
it's not blazing.
Love is not blind. Then you now start seeing, they're just, and my issue with some things is that it's so easy to resolve, but we make a mountain out of it. I mean, one thing that he always used to complain about, he likes to get into the bathroom before me, because if he goes into the bathroom after me, the floor is wet, there's powder all over the floor, the bottom of his trousers are sweeping powder and things like that, And earlier on in marriage, it was like, we didn't have shower curtain, we couldn't afford it, so the water would splash up the floor, you know. But once we got a shower curtain, it wasn't a big deal. You know, there's so many things that getting a shower curtain is the answer. Not fighting about why is the floor wet when I get into the bathroom.
Right.
You know, so there's just so many things that you can.
Yes, I'm just enjoying these little snippets and glimpses into your early days. It seems very, very interesting. But you've really overcome all these things. You've overcome like challenges from before, and somehow you have, would you say the older you get, the more, I don't want to say less loving.
Compliant.
Is that the word?
Well, that's the word that came to mind.
That's how he feels, you know, compliant. Sometimes, I mean, he said the other day,
Sorry, you know, it just sunk. I just understood.
Exactly. Sometimes it's easier for him to give in than to you choose your battles.
Do you give in at all? Does she?
Yeah.
If she does it, it's after a long time.
Long time.
Because, you know, women always know best.
Yes, women are always right.
Very intuitive and, you know.
And I like how he's just complying right now. Okay, no, but back to something you also talked about. You talked about post-marital counseling. Some people do not believe in that. So is it like classes after or just for conflict?
Not classes, just, you know, someone that you can go and talk to. Even if there isn't a conflict, there's something going on in your mind that you can't even tell your partner. You know, you can go to somebody and say, you know, this is what I mean. How should I, you know, talk to him about it? I've had people who have, you know, called me. Until today, the husband doesn't even know the wife called me, you know, and doesn't know that I know the details of what happened. Yeah. But I sort of talked her through it so that she didn't have to respond the way she wanted to respond. And they've gotten over that hump, and he's none the wiser. She that is the wiser, you know.
You know, you've hit an important point, because you can hardly have a marriage that will not have challenges. Mm-hmm. It's impossible, let me put it that way. Now, when the challenges come, they have to be resolved, and we need to help married couples as well, not just people that are planning to get married. So we need to have marital counseling. Okay, again, it should be done by somebody that is skilled and that is proficient at counseling couples. So I think it's important for us to be in a position to counsel people. The other problem is parenting. You don't actually learn how to be a good parent. It's something you learn on the job. And you learn from the experiences you had as a child.
There's no class for it.
You know, and so we need to teach people how to be good parents. I think that's important.
So you're advocating for parenting classes?
Yes. Some people actually do them. Some people do, they may not call it a parenting class, yes, but they actually do them because the standard of parenting is very poor. And
I'm sure as a young mom yourself, you've had, you know, issues on how to deal, especially, I guess your child is still only like 2.
Children have been left at school overnight.
Yeah, and neither parent forgot to pick them up.
You know, so those sort of things, somebody ought to have been asking, where is this child? Or what's,
I don't know how you go to bed without knowing your child is in bed.
Yeah, so that's just structure in the home, really. That's what, wow.
You know, also good parenting, because the way you relate with your siblings is going to reflect on the way you relate with your friends when you're older. So being able to make sure you raise your children to be able to get on with one another and not become rivals, because sibling rivalry is a thing. You don't have favorites amongst your children, or if you do, it's not obvious, you know. Yeah.
Do you have favorites? Just kidding, please.
No, I don't.
I don't want, yes.
You know, the thing is, we just love them each for different things.
Right.
There's certain things that you know you can expect from
this one. They all think they're the favorites anyway, so that's
all different.
That's how God treats us, isn't it? You know, He loves all of us in special ways, and that's just beautiful.
And each child is different.
Exactly. So let's talk about the importance of healthy homes and just healthy marriages to society. Because sometimes when people are getting separated, and some people would not want to hear this, it's like, please, I'm doing this for me. I don't think about there's no bigger picture. The big picture is me right now. But what's the damaging effect that separation and divorce have on society at large?
This is my passion. I say that the family is at the epicenter of God's redemptive plan for mankind. He's doing nothing without the family. Now, whenever you have a dysfunctional family, or whenever families in a community are dysfunctional, the community will be dysfunctional. And so we see in Nigeria today that the families are in trouble. Okay, family values, and all of these things. So it's so important that you create a happy, warm, loving family. The children that will come from that, I'll wager this, that these kids that are killing, the people that are armed bandits, that are kidnapping people, killing people mercilessly, cannot boast of a family, of a loving family. If you came from a loving family, you will not point an AK-47 and pull the trigger on somebody that you don't even know, you know. So it's so important for us, and I think this is the way to rescue Nigeria. Long term, but it starts with the family. We need to make sure that family values are restored and that happy children, that people actually have families. Anybody can have a child and walk away, and that child is put in peril.
Even our politicians, and they've all come from a family. People that do, you know, high in high office, that are doing things that are not palatable, have come from a family, and they must have seen, you know. I remember a story about a child who, in a school, primary school, gave his girlfriend in this class Valentine cards with $10,000 inside. Yeah.
Wow.
And the girl goes home, shows her mom, the mom calls the teacher, and the teacher calls the boy's mom, who haven't noticed that their $10,000 is missing, by the way. And the mother's like, these children.
What?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, so at the end of the day, that child has taken that $10,000 because he knows that they have a stash of money somewhere, and they're not going to know it's missing. Gives it to his girlfriend. What's he trying to do? Buy her favor. And these children are under 13. Yeah. So it's a problem. It's a problem.
The parents didn't see anything wrong with it.
Well, the mother is like, these children. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, there's so many incidences and things like that happen, and you wonder, where has this child come from? That he doesn't... First of all, why should he give a girl $10,000? I mean, he must have been seeing somebody giving somebody money, you know, to buy favors. You know, so, you know, we really need to address, and we need to know what our children are doing. I can't imagine, at the end of the day, I don't even have $10,000 anyway. But it will now, that even if my 500 naira goes missing, I don't know. You know, so these are issues that we need to really, you know, address, you know, with our children, and, you know, let them have value for things, respect things, respect people.
Wow. So staying together is not just for the person, it's not just for, it has a bigger impact on society.
Yes, because the damage that it's going to do to your children, you know, even when you do, people say, although people say, don't say I'm only staying married because of the children, you know.
That's another topic.
Yeah, that's another topic. Yeah. But, you know, if your relationship is solid, then make it work.
Animals in the forest, plants, they all are geared towards raising the next generation. And it's important for us to also devote time and attention to raising the next generation. I find that the biggest problem the parents have is spending time with their children. And some parents want to throw money at their children in order to compensate them for not giving them their time. But on balance, I think the children would rather you than your gifts.
Right.
They don't mind the gifts as well.
Well,
If they had to make a choice.
if they had to make a choice, yeah. The thing is, in such a fast-paced world now, you know, you had said earlier, everyone is working now. So daddy is working, mommy is working. So one complaint I've heard from men, especially like young fathers, is that when the kids come, the attention seems to shift from them to the children. So it's almost like the mothers start to dote and just give all their love and affection and attention to the child, and they start to feel left out. Is this a complaint you have heard, and how do we address this? I'll start with you, Ma.
I'm not the one complaining. Well, one thing I actually made a conscious effort about is, I remember in our younger days, we actually used to go away once a year without the children, you know, and I felt that was, you know, so we needed time for ourselves,
Right.
you know. So the children, of course, when you are around them, there's no way your attention is not going to be divided.
Divided, right. Okay.
Well, for me, it wasn't a problem because I was fully engaged in the children. You know,
You used to do
for
the
the
school
earlier
runs.
ones, I could do the nappies.
Huh?
I changed my daughter's nappies.
Your daughter, what about your sons?
By that time, we had...
By that time, what happened?
But
This
I was
nappy
engaged.
changed maybe once, anyway.
To all of us, a new child was a major event, and so I got engaged in it. So there's no question of I was not getting attention. You know, we were both giving our attention to the children.
Right.
And he used to do the school runs in the morning, and I did it in the afternoon.
Okay. So that's one solution, you know, to parents or to the fathers who are complaining. How do you think a woman can balance that? Because like she said, once the kids are around, the attention is divided. You know, you don't want them screaming.
Well, I think the children need the attention, so that's a given. The men should also look for ways of helping out with the children so that they can, you know, you're doing it together. So
I like that you just said that. I was going to say, I can see some feminists rejoicing wherever they are now.
His daughter being the first one.
Oh, wow, okay. That it's about doing it together, because there's that. And it goes back to what we said initially about just the background and the conditioning of some men. You know, my father was in the chair, my mother would bring food and all of that. So that's changing now, and it's a collaborative
it has to
effort.
change. It has to change.
Yeah. Do you have any final words, you know, regarding marriage? I feel like we are, I just want young people to understand that marriages can work, you know, regardless of the generation. The principles seem to be the same across generations. So the final words to young people planning to get married, those who are newlyweds and probably going through that first phase. And
So they get to the 7-year itch, or is it they say that the 7-year itch? I don't know what it is. But anyway, you're almost there, right?
well, not really.
Don't worry, you won't have an itch. You won't have an itch. I think that, you know, marriage is beautiful and marriage is godly. And for people who are believing God for marriage, you know, go in there knowing that God has brought you two together. The Bible says that he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. So even you're going into your home carrying favor, you know, for your husband, which means favor for your family and the family that's going to evolve, you know. So recognize that you have a role, you know, you are carrying favor. And I believe that, you know, the woman has a lot to do in terms of praying and just making sure everything works in the home, you know. And God is able to help us get through it. You know, we've been married 36 years, but I'm not going to say it's been 36 years of rosy. It's been good. We've gotten over all the obstacles with the help of the Lord. You know, we're in the later years with the help of the Lord. The earlier years, you know, just by
it's still the help of the Lord.
But still the help of the Lord unknowingly. But, you know, so I believe that people should covet marriage. And when you covet marriage, go in there knowing that God can help you and see you through. And that your marriage can be an example, because at the end of the day, that's the example we have of the marriage between Christ and the church. That's the example we have, the marriages that we see, you know, around us. And one just prays that God continues to help her. Because at the end of the day, it's not easy. It's the grace of God. You know, glory of faith.
Glory of faith.
Okay, last word on that. One of the biggest reasons people have problems in their marriages is unmet expectations. And so it's so important that you prepare for marriage. A lot of people prepare for the wedding, not for the marriage. It's important that you prepare for the marriage so that you can manage your expectations before you say your vows. You know what to expect, you know what expectations were unrealistic, and you know what to do about areas of difference between you. So yes, I would recommend marriage any day. I think it's the only way of raising families that are godly. And just make sure you prepare. And shout out if you have a challenge. Shout out to couples like us. You know, shout out.
Right. Shouldn't hesitate to ask for help. You know, it's not a sign of weakness. You know, if you need help, you need help. You know.
Thank you so much. We could go on and on. Like, I'm enjoying this. I feel like coming every week to just sit down and glean from your wealth of wisdom.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot more that we could talk about it, especially with parenting and bringing up children and all that. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah. Okay, it's been amazing talking to you. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. You know, for me, this is the kind of conversation you go back to listen to over and over again because there's just so much to learn. And things I've learned really from today, ask for help. If you need help, ask for help. Don't be shy. Don't go to family, from what was said. Just go to professional counselors, therapists, and pastors, who would guide you accordingly if need be. I also want to say that, yes, marriages work, okay, and marriages can work. And regardless of what we see around us, and I'm speaking to those in my generation, and regardless of what we see around us, there are kingdom marriages that are working, that are functional, and that are raising functional children, okay? And I hope that that's what you are aspiring to be, and that's what you're aspiring and hoping that your marriage is going to be like. Once again, thank you for watching, and hopefully we do this again. See you soon. Bye. I'm just here to learn, really, and now I don't, yeah.
Thank you very much. Let's hope we meet your expectations.